What was your creepiest glitch in the Matrix experience? When I was maybe 7 or 8, I was at my aunt's house. All of a sudden the carpet in her living room was a dark green color. It had always been a light baby blue color, but not anymore. It wasn't even a blink and it's gone kind of thing. I remember purposely blinking and even rubbing my eyes to make it go back to normal. Eventually it did. Anyway, hands down the weirdest thing to ever happen to me. When I was younger, I had a dream I had visited my friend. In the dream we went skateboarding to another boy's house who was his friend, someone I had never met before. He went into this house to get his friend to come outside, and I waited on the front porch. The dream went on and nothing significant happened. A few weeks later in real life I went skateboarding with my friend. He suggested going to grab his friend to come with us. I agreed, thinking nothing of it. We arrived at his house, and since I didn't know the kid, I offered to wait outside while he went inside to grab him. I turned and looked out from the front porch and was hit with this realization that I had dreamt this exact moment weeks earlier. The weather was the same, the house was the same down to every detail, the front yard. Everything was just as I had dreamt it weeks earlier. I could not have possibly known this kid or had been to his house before. I had never met him before. This experience stuck with me and still does. It was extremely eerie to say the least. This one isn't creepy, but it did make me question everything for a while. I like to leave early for work, just because you never know how traffic is. I got to see all the cars that would leave around the same time every day. It's weird to say, but in my mind, if I saw these cars then I knew I was on time for work. I got used to always seeing a really nice Maserati and a Lexus with a vanity plate that said "You Wish" on it. And I figured, since I'm driving towards their office park, they work in the same area. One morning I was really late, like 2 hours late. I'm driving to work, and I see these 2 cars also driving, like if it was a normal morning. Again, not creepy, but what are the astronomical chances that these people were also as late as I was? I know it's so odd, but it made me question everything, and then the next morning I saw these cars on my commute like nothing ever happened. One day while buying tobacco in a tiny shop, I just went blind. I saw the fireworks, like when you rub your eyes, appearing at the edge of my vision. It quickly grew, and after 1-2 seconds it covered my full field of view. A nice person helped me out, and I sat on the stairs in front of the shop for 5 to 10 minutes. Only after that time my vision came back. No drugs were involved, I wasn't severely dehydrated, and not severely hungry, although my food intake is rather low and unhealthy. A truly frightening experience. Oh, I finally have one. My sisters and I were at my dad's house last year, and we were making cookies for my nieces. My oldest sister just got done using the rolling pin right as I was turning around to wash my hands, so my back was to her. All of a sudden I absolutely just knew she was going to put the pin on the counter, and it was going to roll off and break her foot. Keep in mind it was still in her hand when I turned, so I didn't actually see her put it down. She had literally just finished rolling some cookie dough and the pin hadn't even lifted up from the final roll, so it wasn't like I saw where she was going to place it or anything. But it was deja vu on a whole other level. I spun around without even really thinking about it, dove forward, and reached out with my left hand. I'm right-handed FTR, and caught that goddamn rolling pin midair about halfway between the counter and floor, like I'd practiced it a million times. It was so fucking smooth, and there's no way I could do it again with my left hand if I trained for a week. Everyone made comments about how great my reflexes are. Spoiler, they are not. I'm 6'4" and 275. I'm not grossly overweight or anything, but I also ain't that graceful or smooth. I didn't mention the insane deja vu bordering on prescience thing and everyone forgot about it an hour later. But it was the craziest damn feeling. Like not only had it happened before, but this time I could see what was going to happen and change the outcome. It definitely stuck with me as one of the crazier things I've experienced, even if it doesn't sound like much. So there I was at 8 years old in a swimming pool drowning my dumbass off. I was really weak cause I had been swimming the whole day and decided to sink to the bottom of the deep end. When I tried to swim back up I just couldn't make it to the surface. So I'm like half freaking out and half well shit guess I'll die when I reach my breaking point and gasp in a bunch of air. I'm sitting at the bottom of a pool and I'm breathing like it's no problem. I ended up swimming all the way back to the shallow end of the pool and climbing out that way, then collapsed and started choking and puking up a bunch of water. I'm pretty sure my brain just broke and I was breathing water, but I thought it was air and I somehow didn't die and made it all the way along the length of the pool and out before I noticed what was happening. It's the only explanation that makes any sense to me. A few months ago I went to a trip in another city for a day. I was with two of my friends. We left on Saturday night and got back on Sunday around 8 p.m. They left me to my car and I went straight home. When I got home I went to say hello to my dad and stepmom. Then they go asking me, when did you get back? I, confused, said I literally just got back. My dad was like, come on, we saw you in your car earlier today. You were wearing your white coat and you even said hello. My dad and stepmom went to a walk in our neighborhood earlier that afternoon. They saw a girl who looks exactly just like me, has the same coat I have, driving the exact same car as me. And the girl waved to my parents with a big smile on when she saw them. As I waved done, they were convinced it was me. My own dad. But I was 500 kilometers away at that moment. What are the freaking odds? I think I was at two places at the same time, without knowing it. Still freaking me out. In junior high my brother and I went to a big empty field to hit golf balls. We were the only ones there. We'd take turns. One of us would hit 20 to 30 balls with a pitching wedge, 70 yards or so, and then we'd go collect them and switch. At one point I was hitting and talking to my brother who was facing me, about 3 feet away. I noticed that the ball I was about to hit had a really hokey name, Pinseeker, as opposed to the typical Titleist, Top Flight, etc. And I even made a joke about the name. Then I hit the ball, and it went about 70 yards, and took a hop or two. Then we started talking again and wham! A ball landed right between us. We both jumped back, and looked around but there was no one anywhere. We got the ball from where it ended up behind us, and it was the Pinseeker I had just hit. We went out, and got the rest of the balls and the Pinseeker wasn't there. We were so creeped out we left and went home. So somehow that ball either went through a wormhole, or went backwards in time, because it landed exactly at the spot between us from where I had hit it. I presume if we had been looking out in the field, instead of facing each other and talking, we might have seen it literally reverse its flight and shoot up in the air, and back toward us. Anyway, to this day, 40 years later, we refer to it as the golf ball incident. A calculator fell out of the ceiling. Used to drive on back roads to get to work. There was one part in particular where there was a middle lane to turn left. Usually, I never encountered people on this road at all, but one day I started seeing one other car in front of me every morning. It was never the same car, but it'd always just be one single car and no one else in sight. The weird part was that, whenever I'd get to the part with the left turning lane in the middle, whichever car was in front of me would never get into the lane until I turned my turn signal on. They'd never use their own signal, they'd literally just change lanes as soon as I used my signal. After noticing this for several days, I thought it just has to be a coincidence, so I decided to test it. Next day, I did it way earlier than I normally would, same thing. The day after I did it a little later than I normally would, same thing. The third day, I decided to do one final test. I waited until the very last second to use my signal and take the turn, bypassing the turning lane altogether. The front of the car in front of me was literally past the turn, but as soon as I hit my signal, they slammed on their brakes in the middle of the road and took the turn, having to almost do a U-turn to make it. I didn't do anything further after that, just merely decided it was one of those things. Eventually I only started having someone in front of me about half the time in the morning. But every single time at that spot, until I literally got a new job and stopped driving that way, if there was someone in front of me on the way, I could guarantee they'd move into the lane the moment I use my signal. When I was 17 I was sleeping over at a friend's house. I had to work the next morning and had to get up at 7 AM to go to work. So we go to bed. I set an alarm for 7 and go to sleep. The next morning my alarm goes off. I sit up. It's light out. I see my friend asleep with her girlfriend in their bed. I was on a mattress on the floor. I started to get up, but decided to go back to sleep for 15 minutes, so I set my alarm for 7:15 and lay back down. What seems like hours later I jerk up because I thought I had slept through my alarm. I grab my phone and it says 3 AM. I look around. It's still dark out. At this point I'm like, what the fuck? I get up and wake up my friend and ask her what time it is, and she checks her phone and tells me 3 AM. I thought I had just had a super vivid dream, but when I checked my phone, the alarm had been changed to 7:15. Still have no idea what happened. Back then I was suicidal. Went to go through with it, drowning myself in the Mississippi. Girl came out of nowhere and started talking to me. Invited me to Jack in Box. Talked me out of it. After said and done, no sign of her ever even existing. The people working at the restaurant said I was by myself when I asked them. Can't find her on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, anywhere. I guess not so much creepy, but it's certainly the strangest, most unexplainable one. A month ago I bought a new TV. The next day I was working at home with the TV on the 40 channel. That's a news channel in Mexico. The TV lost the signal about 10 minutes, but I didn't take importance. When it recovered the signal I heard a woman say, "Are you still watching?" As soon as she finished the sentence the TV lost the signal again. Maybe a coincidence, but was too weird. While traveling I randomly met the same guy in Paris, Seoul and Toronto. Neither of us travel frequently. I don't even want to try calculating the odds for this. I was hungover every day for a few years when I had a dream that I was wide awake and the Grim Reaper walked in and told me if I didn't stop I'd die. Had one beer the next day and headed to Alcoholics Anonymous. Turns out I have a genetic disorder that depletes the same vitamin alcohol does and got really sick from it years later. I could have ended up a lot sicker, I'm guessing, if I didn't stop drinking at 20 years old. I used to work as a night operator at a hospital switchboard. Almost every night I would get calls from a patient in a room in the involuntary psychiatric ward where patients aren't supposed to have phones. It was an elderly lady who asked every single time to be connected to a flower shop in town. If I transferred her call, that would be the end of it for a few days. If I didn't and said we weren't allowed to transfer the call, she would always call back 1 to 2 hours later asking to be connected to the flower shop. Either way, the calls kept happening. Eventually I rang the manager at the psychiatric ward, explained what was happening, and asked him to please make sure the phone was disconnected in the room. He said without any joking around that the ward was haunted, there were no phones in the rooms, and that room had no patients in it. So the next time she called, I googled the flower shop. It had been closed for years. I explained this to the old woman. She politely thanked me, then hung up. And she called back an hour later, asking to be connected to the closed flower shop. It was always the same script. I accepted part of the job, to be connecting the netherworld to the flower world, and went on with my life. Thanks for watching, and share your stories. Don't forget to consider the idea to maybe think about potentially subscribing. Peace.